Alright, ranged DPS, you guys are up. How have you fared in what people are already calling the ranged expansion? Well, the answer basically is reroll mage, and I'm only half joking. So, as always, in these videos, we call a class a winner if it has gotten good changes that make it better to play at the average level, if it's more fun, if the design's great, if it's got more tools for soloing or making a dungeon a bit smoother, if it has a rotation that feels better designed, that feels more fun. A loser then is a spec that hasn't really gotten better, or has maybe got just a little bit worse. That may be a downgraded tree, it may be just feeling deeply unloved, the kind of spec you may still enjoy playing, but through gritted teeth. So, let's go Mage first, and Evoca, today's sponsor. Squarespace, they're the online site builder with killer templates, tools, and features to get your web presence started right. Today, we'll be talking about their business things. Now, you can go to squarespace.com/BellularGaming, or you can click the link down below. When you do that, you'll get a free trial, and then you can use code BellularGaming for 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain. Now, the likes of Blueprint and Fluid Engine make your site look amazing and to your liking. Today, though, I talk about business. Squarespace can handle all of your store needs. That means physical goods, digital goods, they'll hook up with your fulfillment center, and also the likes of services. And with services, they can do the likes of reservations, invoices, that kind of thing. Both for you and your customers, it's just a cohesive end-to-end experience. Like, not only do customers get a great site experience, but they get flexible payment options, which is great for your business. Credit cards, PayPal, Apple Pay, and in eligible countries, buy now, pay later methods like Afterpay and ClearPay, and they've actually just added support for local delivery as of June, so they keep on building. Now, not only do you get a terrific site, they also will support your business. They'll take hassle out of the equation. Be that with invoices, sending design proposals, and getting detailed analytics for all that you're doing. So if you want to get started today, you can check out squarespace.com/BellularGaming. Now, when you do that, you can actually make a full site under the free trial, and then when you're ready to send it live, you'll get 10% off your first purchase of a site or a domain with code BellularGaming. I simply have to start it off with mages, right? Because you guys are ascending to true S tier. The hero talent trees are just exceptional, and 2 specs have been reworked. They're now boasting top tier crowd control, amazing defensive utility, a raid buff, and of course bloodlust. I mean, hell, just take a look at the new mass barrier. That alone is kinda game changing. So, while not all new, what we do see is these elements combined together to create a truly unparalleled class. So let's get into the details on Arcane Mage first. The Arcane Mage rework retains its core identity, but it streamlines the gameplay down. That means that the old launch sequence opener has been condensed and simplified, and they've done that by removing buttons and integrating key effects into existing abilities. For some people, that won't be welcome, but I do think that for the vast majority, this is just going to play far more smoothly. I'll give you a few examples. Radiant Spark, Mana Gem, and Nether Tempest are all gone. Missiles has been clarified now, where it can only be cast during clear casting, but that is with an improved proc rate. It just feels like it has a more clear position in the spec like that. Then Supernova's moved over to the class tree where it competes with Dragon's Breath, and as you move through the tree you see tons of little ways to get haste, extra damage, or extra bonuses from your clear casting, or augment other things like your Touch of the Magi. Now, I get streamlining can be a little bit worrying sometimes, and yeah, the high points of double lust and your insane launch sequence are gone, but there are cool things to compensate, and frankly, the new version just does feel more smooth to play, and I think more people will just enjoy it. So what you'll find yourself doing, for say a high point in the spec, is the likes of firing off huge barrages and orbs in dungeons and just loving every second of it. It looks and feels great. And then there's lovely quality of life. I mean, just look at this. They've baked Arcane Familiar into Arcane Intellect, meaning that you won't have to recast it, which is just lovely. So you've got that, which then can combine with Sun Fury itself being one of the top 3 hero talents in cool factor. You put that together and Arcane just looks like the biggest of winners. Fire then. It's not as dramatic, but you guys are still a colossal winner. So, damage is actually shifting from combustion windows and over to cascading living bombs and AoE that are applied by Fire Blast after hot streaks, which basically just means lots of explosions and your screen being full of damage numbers, which is great. Then talent choices have been streamlined a bit, basically reducing how many you've got to spend on mandatory picks like Flame Strike and the things that you'll always need. Maintenance buffs are toned down a bit, which does make things a little bit more forgiving, but I think more importantly, importantly for many people, it does ease a bit of that weak aura dependency. It's a solid set of changes that truly soars when combined with the hero talents. Sun Fury pretty much goes full killfest. You get a Phoenix, right? And the Phoenix flings pyros with you during combustion, and then when it goes away, it gives you 6 seconds of hyperthermia. And of course, hyperthermia means instant crit pyroblasts and flame strikes, which feels absolutely immense. The good news doesn't stop there though, because your other hero talent tree, Frostfire, is actually pretty great. It returns Frostfire Bolt to the game along with a bunch of triggered frost effects, like Meteor also dropping Comet Storm, which has just got a cool factor to it. It even lets you do nice things like overlap your shields for even more survivability. So putting all of this together, basically, Fire is close to its perfect form. Then we've got Frost Mage. It sees fewer big changes. Most improvements just come from the Frostfire tree and minor talent additions and reshuffles. As an example, Death's Chill now also buffs spell damage during Icy Vein, so that's pretty nice. Otherwise, it's the same Frost Mage that you know, bolstered with real good hero talent trees, which overall means that it is looking great, and as a whole, Mage it's just coming off remarkably strong. Frost is certainly the least interesting of the three, but it definitely does have its place in the game, and that just means that as a pure DPS, you basically could not go wrong picking a Mage. Hunters then, finally we emerge as winners. Now it's not the total redesign that I may have wanted in the past, but honestly, it's good. We gain Implosive Trap for reliable crowd control, we have a 3-target intimidation, and a trank shot that purges and soothes, and it can actually hit up to 3 targets with a talent. So that's pretty damn great. Then as an example, Survival of the Fittest has now got 2 charges, which means way more defensives. And that essentially means that the class tree is just a buffet of utility. It's not just utility that's changed in the class tree though. Death Track Room has been removed, which will disappoint some, and Serpent Sting is actually reworked now as a spec-specific passive with varying different effects and talents. And oddly enough, Explosive Shot is here, but as a core part of every Hunter spec. Just kind of unexpected, but honestly, fair play devs, it works in practice. Let's do marksmanship first. To TLDR it, right? Somebody has taken a scalpel and they have made art. Basically the class designer equivalent of Mads Mikkelsen's Hannibal Lecter. Small incisions but a big impact. Take this one. During True Shot, you fire a second arcane shot or multi-shot. That of course consumes your precise shot stacks, and that streamlines this part of the rotation just transformationally. It is so much better. And overall, resource generation feels more balanced here. It's not overwhelming, it's not scarce, it just feels well tuned. We've essentially got a spec that feels more focused and intuitive, whereas in the past, it sometimes just felt like a bunch of Hunter stuff thrown together. We've got some cool new features, including an upgrade to Barrage that makes it act like multiple simultaneous rapid fires, so that's pretty sweet. And they've also nerfed Lone Wolf by 5%. Now, it's not like our damage is going down overall. They've basically done this so that you can use a pet and not feel bad about it, which was pretty major if you were going to be bringing a pet that would have some nice utility that your party needs. Overall, it's really good stuff, but there is a little bit of a downside here. So while the core spec changes are really good and it feels a lot better, the hero talents are just less impressive. Black Arrow for Dark Rangers and Sentinel's Lunar Owl, they fit class fantasies, but to be honest, gameplay wise, they do just feel a bit tacked on top. Now that's by no means bad, it's just not as exciting as, say, the Sun Fury stuff that we discussed with Mage. Beast Mastery is seeing subtle yet effective changes. The focus and barbed shot economy feels improved here, striking a better balance that simply feels good. They've also taken the right side of the talent tree and used it to emphasize dots a bit more, so you'll be seeing buffs to Bloodshed's Bleeds and to Serpent Sting's Poisons. So overall, we have core gameplay that remains similar, but just feels more refined, right? The resources and the abilities are just lining up better to prevent overcapping or depletion. It's the kind of thing that's not massively exciting, but it is a strong improvement. That said, there are 2 losses. Number 1, Stampede's removal, and number 2, well, let's be real, the pack leader hero tree is just really boring. So this one is a winner, but not by as much. Warlocks then, so you guys are mostly a win, but with a little bit of a squishier twist. That's because Burning Rush's damage reduction has taken a real big hit, and the same's actually went for Demon Skin and Soul Leech's shielding. So yeah, you can still do multiple health stones within combat, but it is a net loss to your survivability. With that said though, let's get into the specs. Demonology had a bit of a spooky time earlier on in beta, but somehow they are actually emerging here as a winner. But it is via trade-off, and it's one you may not like. Essentially, expect fewer Demon Bolt procs and more Shadow Bolt casting. So that will feel kinda bad, but there is a very cool addition, and that is upgrading Vile Fiend to Shatug in single target and Faharg in AoE, and if those sound familiar, well, they're Sargeras' Fellhounds from the Antorus raid. So they're actually cool and they feel great in gameplay. Then we see a much improved set of talents. So Tyrant is now available every minute without talent investment, and that focuses the gameplay on preparing for its damage window by just getting as many demons rolling as you can. Doom has also been reworked and it's pretty cool. So now it's passively applied via your instant demon bolts, and it even summons in imps and the occasional Doom Guard when it pops. That's kinda neat. Otherwise though, it's mostly similar, with our wins being the dogs and the hero talents, especially the Diabolist. It's mostly a passive hero talent, but it's neat. Essentially, you're counting down a ritual to summon in either an Overlord, a Mother of Chaos, or a Pit Lord with your next Hand of Gul'dan. Each of those spawns, of course, looks awesome, and 2 of them actually give you a proc for an upgraded Shadow Bolt or Hand of Gul'dan. So basically, it is just massive demons everywhere energy. It's a real standout. So this is left being simple, but fantasy forward and just plain cool. Destruction Warlock then squeaks out a win, but it is kinda close. The talent tree reshuffle essentially aims to boost Shadowburn and Soulfire's viability, but the thing is that min-maxing a simple kit has always been Destro's strength, so more options are not necessarily better, especially when Shadowburn looks like it's supposed to be giving you a bit of a movement window, but basically feels so weak outside of execute range that it just doesn't feel good. Dimensional Rift returns, but it adds underwhelmingly little, and then some easy fixes are left on the table. An example is Cataclysm fighting with Inferno, Inferno being the talent that upgrades Rain of Fire. It just feels like they could have done something to fix that up in the tree. Another thing is some people are concerned that the increased shard generation we're seeing overall here might lead to just Chaos Bolt spam, and that's something that is fun in theory, but it risks making Chaos Bolt feel less special. Now you're probably listening to this and thinking, what the hell, man, why are you calling this a winner? Well, that's because we've not got to the hero talents yet. They save the day here. So Diabolist, while it is better suited to the Demonology fantasy, actually does work quite well here. It lets Destro summon in big demons, and it gets you a nice upgraded Chaos Bolt sometimes. Hellcaller then leans into Affliction-style gameplay. It upgrades Immolate to Wither, which is a stacking dot with a chance to randomly explode for burst damage, and it also adds a 1-minute haste cooldown that combines the curses into one. So, basically, they actually feel pretty damn good. As for Affliction though, well, that will be talked about in the losers category. Next up then, Elemental. There's some cool class tree things going on, a bit of a shuffle that just makes key utility easier to get to. You've also got a new personal defensive and a new raid buff in the form of Sky Fury, which is basically just a bit of Wind Fury for everybody, and certainly it's something that'll make shamans feel like they've got great value in any group that's got melee. Ice Fury is also different now. Instead of being its own button on a cooldown, Lava Burst will have a chance to turn your Nest Frost Shock into an Ice Fury. It's instant cast, which owns, but now it only affects your next 2 shocks, which basically downgrades your movement to 3 instants instead of 4, and you can't always rely on it being there when you need it. Now, that kind of advanced movement thing is maybe more of a niche use case. Basically though, I think this ends up feeling quite a lot better, and it just feels like a more clean design. I mean, Elemental can feel a little bit overpacked anyway, so I don't think it'll be that lost. Unfortunately though, Electrified Shocks is gone. That was the fun little minigame of pacing out your Ice Fury shocks for a longer damage bonus, but I do think that's a smaller price to pay for a tree that's got lots of nice little upgrades and bonuses, like a 30-second Primordial Wave or upgraded elementals that last longer, and then, whenever they leave, well, just spawn little versions of themselves. So that's pretty neat and fantasy forward, and best of all, Ascendance is not a choice with deeply rooted elements anymore. That means that Elemental actually can get to use their major class cooldown instead of never picking it. And it's also been upgraded to add a pretty massive 25% haste. Under the hood then, power is moving out of overloads and into base spells, which should result in a little bit less gambling for DPS. We're a little more mixed in the hero talents though, so Stormbringer upgrades the lightning focus stuff really well, actually. It does feel pretty cool, but Farseer is just an underwhelming addition to the Primordial Wave and Lava Burst focus side of the tree. So not perfect, but it certainly does end up being quite a happy spec. Evoca see a divided future, with augmentation clearly emerging as our winner here, and in a way they're even a winner by default. The tank balancing that tones down tank self-sustain is absolutely going to make augmentation's run smoothing kit just feel a bit more valuable. Now that's not to say we've got some nice changes. As an example, key upgrades include a passive that reveals allies' active major cooldowns, with prescience then auto-targeting those players. So I think that's a really nice upgrade to their gameplay. Gameplay-wise, most of the changes come from their very nice new hero talents. Chrono Warden doubles down on all of the tasty time stuff, and it turns Hover into Warp. Then it lets Warp drop motes that give your allies a speed buff. That's just awesome. And it also increases their buff power with Threads of Fate and allows Ebon Might and Prescience to crit for bonus stats. The fantasy's strong, so GG Blizz. But then there is Scale Commander, and it basically trades the buff focus for pure spectacle. Post-Empower eruptions mark targets for Drakthir flyby attacks triggered by you and your allies. This might seem a bit outlandish, but it is remarkably effective in practice. You are basically summoning in, you're calling in a danger close, but swap in, like, your A10 Warthog with its lovely brap noise, but, it's a bunch of lizard boys. I don't know, for whatever reason, that's the image that appeared in my head, and I'm sticking with it, because you know what? This one's just cool. I think either way you go with the hero talents, there's a strong fantasy and strong gameplay. As you can see then, the winners are looking damn good. Now, there are absolutely losers to talk about, but I mean, seriously, Mage. Like, come on, Mage is standing out so damn well here. But that being said, there are the losers, so let's get to the more spicy bit of the video. Devastation Evoca emerges as our first loser. The TLDR here is that augmentation just remains superior in most cases. It's got comparable damage overall, combined with better survivability and group defensives. Then, a very large change. Dragon Rage extensions, which were once Dev's most thrilling feature, basically just now lies dead. Blizzard capped it at 16 extra seconds, essentially citing balance concerns similar to Breath of Sindragosa, especially with power infusion existing. And I do understand their reasoning there, but it just feels like they've offered no replacement to counter that loss. On top of that, there are issues with the talent tree that did not get addressed. Things like Firestorm receiving additional attention, but not fixes to its glaring flaws of long cast times, and of course uptime losses whenever mobs just move. Those being ignored just feels bad in a world where Mage's Flame Strike got an alternative to Flame Patch, which basically just solves the same problem. But it is not all gloom though, right? And that is because Scale Commander gives them the fairly epic-looking Mass Disintegrate, so definitely props to that. Then the Flame Shaper tree offers a new dot-focus playstyle with Engulf, which is fun enough, but it just pales to Scale Commander. Overall then, Devastation is not a humongous loser, but it just cannot escape the shadow of its superior sibling. Affliction Warlock then, pains me to say it, but you guys are a bit of a mild loser here, and it's not because of bad changes, it's just because, again, you struggle to stand out as compared to the other two specs of Warlock. Plus, while we are seeing some improvements, there are still a few fundamental issues that persist. So, going through the changes then, it's got Shadowbolt buffs as an option with Drain Soul, and the tree's also putting Dark Glare towards the center and basically giving you more choices on top of that for a bit of customization. Then Nightfall for instant bolts and hasten drains now procs more often and off more dots, which certainly will feel good. And there's a real cool thing here in an AoE explosion when refreshing Agony that basically just makes dot maintenance way more fun. It's got a capstone for increased execute damage that's right beside a new channel spender called Oblivion. Truth be told, it mostly sounds great, but it is a little bit all over the place with the gameplay, though there are very clear wins like, say, the Nightfall procs hitting hard and just feeling good. Other things are not feeling so good though, like Malefic Rapture, which now basically just feels underwhelming despite it being the main spender for this spec. And that means it's hard to look at Warlock and pick Affliction unless you are super into the fantasy, and it doesn't help that basically Hellcaller and Soul Harvester are just way less cool than Diabolist. By no means are they bad, they're actually pretty good gameplay-wise, they just won't really get your blood pumping as much. And I guess speaking of not getting the blood pumping, or maybe if you're angry and disappointed getting it pumping, we have got the Balanced Druid. Oh boy. Balance stands out as a genuine loser in this expansion. It's left behind when so many others have got exciting changes. Sometimes it's actually the opposite. As an example, the removal of Primordial Arcanic Pulsar, which was once central to gameplay, just leaves a void behind now. It hasn't really been replaced with something similarly cool. Now, Blizzard's problem was the balance issues that it caused, essentially too much damage taking place during its windows. But now, it's just gone, and that means the spec revolves around maintaining dots and managing a single eclipse with build or spender gameplay and not a whole lot else. So, if you want simplicity, that's fine, it's still fun enough, but the gameplay just lacks those high points that make it really exciting. Then there's the hero talents. Sadly, these are a mixed bag. So Elune's Chosen boosts moon spells and astral power stuff. But again, it lacks any true excitement. There's just no new, like, fun toy to it. Keeper of the Grove pushes you towards using lots of treants, which are just underwhelming. So it's not like balance is totally doomed or anything, it's just that there's so little standout and some elements clash. Take Lunar Calling as a great example here. It changes your rotation to use Starfire in single target. Now, that's strong, and it might sound cool to you just using Starfires all the time, but that just means that your Wrath buffs feel like they're wasted, and the long cast time just makes you feel rooted in place, so it doesn't really work. Okay, Shadow Priest, I've got bad news. You are in the loser category, but the good news is there is a silver lining to this, and that is in the form of Void Weaver. It is basically one of the coolest hero talents in the game. To be honest, what holds them back is a simple and glaring issue. Silence remains on a 30-second cooldown, and it clashes with upgraded Dispersion on the spec tree. That's just a massive pain in an expansion that's shaping up to, need quite a few interrupts. The other side then is mobility. Yeah, not having a lot of it just stings, especially because, I mean, say in Mythic Plus Dungeons, there's a lot of mechanics. And so that means that Shadow is largely unchanged. It is not inherently bad. It does in fact have Void Weaver, which is, I mean, standout, exciting, and awesome. But the thing is, how Shadow Priest kind of clicks with the rest of the game, and I think there's just some usability issues there. So there you have it. Today's essentially a whirlwind through the most important things for you to know, basically to inform some of your decision making. Pre-patch is up right now, so if something looked really cool here, you can definitely check it out for yourself. But again, remember, the hero talents in a few cases really do make these, and the hero talents are not going to be available, of course, until the expansion releases. Big picture then, I think it's fair to say that we're doing pretty well here. There are a few losers, but look, this is nobody like plummeting down to F tier or being awful. Now, of course, you may see some things here end up in a low tier when we're talking about throughput, talking about performance. That's the sort of thing that, again, will just depend on balancing, and that's totally up to Blizzard. Now, you've seen ranged, but you should absolutely check out melee, and you can check it out, well, basically, once my face disappears. So, yeah, bye.